If you have a true ghostly, glitchy, or even creepy story you'd like to hear featured on the channel, then go to mariesfield.com and send it my way. And of course, thank you. Back in the early 2000s, my family and I went on a camping trip to a popular lake. The drive was about 4 hours, which wasn't terrible, but there were 3 of us kids, me being the oldest at 15, my younger brother 10, and sister 6, and both my mom and dad. Upon arrival, we set up our tents, which consisted of a large family-style tent and a much smaller one. My parents and younger siblings shared the larger one, and they let me have one to myself. Sometimes my little sister would want to sleep in the tent with me, and that was okay. She was a pretty hard sleeper. Once the tents were put up, I was free to do whatever I really wanted, as long as we stayed close. My siblings stayed near the tents, playing with their toys in the nearby gravel or sand. I don't know why I remember this place so well, but I knew how to get to the beach, and I wanted to walk there and swim. I was given permission, so I grabbed a towel and headed to the water. I sat on the beach for a while, just taking in the warm sun, until I finally wanted to jump in the water. There were already several people there, so I wasn't alone, but I was thankfully left alone. I did notice a younger boy that looked close to my age that was swimming, wearing goggles, and seemingly diving into the water. I remember watching for a while because I didn't bring goggles or even think to do so, but I thought it would be cool to use them and look at the bottom of the lake. I guess I was staring a bit too much because he noticed and smiled at me. A bit embarrassed, I smiled back and then turned away to make myself look preoccupied, as much as you can standing in a bed of water. The rest of that evening went without incident. I washed off in the nearby showers, then headed back to my family where they were preparing dinner. The trip went about the same while we were there. We ate together, played some games together, maybe even fished, and then I would head to the beach to swim with the rest of my family, following shortly behind. It wasn't unusual, but I did see that same boy just about every time we went swimming. He would either already be there or would end up showing up shortly after me. I didn't mind it though, as I thought he was cute and he was paying me attention, so what was the harm? Eventually, he did approach me and handed me a rock that had a cool impression on it, saying he thought I would like it. Then we started talking about what all he's seen down there, and he let me use them. It was actually pretty fun, and I told myself to get goggles the next time we either went into town or came out here. I looked forward to going swimming, anticipating that he would be there, so I made an effort to look my best, as much as I could. We were there for 4 days, 3 nights, and on the 3rd day, he said that they were going to be leaving the next morning, so that would be the last time he would get to go swimming. I made a comment about how we should do one last dive together to see what we find, and he suggested we swim further out towards the safety barrier that was out there. I agreed, thinking it was something different as I rarely went out that far. There was no reason, I guess I just never needed or wanted to, but there we went, racing how fast we could swim to it. After we arrived, I think I dived once, and then he took the goggles back and motioned for me to come closer, like he was going to whisper something to me. It seemed silly at the time, because there wasn't anyone close enough to hear us, but I obliged. He suggested we make out. I had gone through several crushes, but I had never dated yet, so this completely took me by surprise. I could feel my face getting hot, and I didn't know what to say. I stammered and finally was able to speak, offering to give him our phone number. We had just had a landline at the time, and he laughed and accepted the number, but then again pushed his first intentions, while also putting his hand on my side. I pushed it off of me and told him I didn't even know him. Now feeling uncomfortable and my time spoiled, I told him I had to go and started swimming back. He made a remark at me, but I didn't even look back and continued my way out of the water. Feeling like I needed a shower more than usual, I went to the stalls to do so. The bathrooms and showers for men and women are completely separated buildings, the women's being closer to the front of the beach. Walking in, you see the sinks and bathroom stalls, and in the back, there are 4 showers. I usually put my clothes and towel on the bench right outside the stall because I hated putting on wet clothes, which meant I undressed outside of the stall. I got in, used the cheap soap dispenser they provided, and lathered up. As I showered, I started getting this uneasy feeling that would not go away. My nerves were already on edge, so I stopped to look around. I even opened the stall door, peeking out into the room, seeing if someone was around. It was empty. I went back to my shower, dismissing it as paranoia stemming from the odd encounter with the boy. But as I continued, so did the feeling. It was like someone was watching me. Not being able to overcome this feeling, I quickly turned off the water and flung open the door. As I looked around again, I saw a dark shadow towards the entrance, like someone was standing at it, just about to enter or maybe leaving. I was suspicious at this point because I never even heard a toilet flush or another shower turn on. I turned to get dressed so I could just get out of there when my heart just plummeted to the floor. My clothes were gone. My towel was on the floor like it was dropped in a rush, but that was it. I looked under the bench and in all of the stalls, but they were gone. This confirmed my suspicion and confirmed that it wasn't just a shadow. There was someone in there with me. I wrapped my towel around me and looked out the door to see if anyone was around, anyone carrying my clothes, but there were just a few people that were already at the beach when I left. Except for one. I didn't see that boy anywhere. I knew it had to be him. And if it was him, what are the chances I felt like I was being watched because I was? The showers were just like the little toilet stalls, so there were breaks in the walls where anyone could have easily looked. I also then recalled the remark he made as I was leaving. He said something along the lines of, "Fine, go take your shower then." I wasn't even out of the water yet, so why would he assume that's where I was going? I felt violated and scared, not knowing what to do. He took everything. My clothes and bathing suit were gone. I paced for a while in there, trying to figure out what to do. I could wait until someone else came in and told them, or I could make a run for it. The walk wasn't that far, but still way further than my 15-year-old self was willing to go in just a towel. So, I waited. I knew my parents would either show up eventually to swim, or because they were worried I hadn't returned yet. But I also hoped someone would come in sooner and I could tell them to go get my parents. Thankfully, that's what happened. 2 older ladies came in, and right before they got into the showers, I asked them for help. I told them that someone took my clothes and they looked appalled. One lady gave me her cover-up dress, which was obviously too big, but not at all see-through, thankfully. They walked with me back to my family. It became a fiasco when I got back. I had to embarrassingly explain why I didn't have my clothes, and even though I had no proof, I wasn't going to hold back the fact that I had an idea of who could have done it. My dad's face instantly became red. After I got dressed and gave the lady's dress back, my dad wanted to drive around looking for this kid. We went to the beach and to different campgrounds, and we never found him. I never saw him interacting with anyone at the beach, so I couldn't even identify his family or anyone he came with. We went back to our camp without any luck. I could tell my dad was furious, and even though I knew he wasn't mad at me, I still felt bad. I feel like I ruined our trip. We went home the next day as normal, but my mom slept in the tent with me just to be safe. We never saw that kid again, nor my clothes, and I still get this creepy, gross feeling that he's out there somewhere, still holding on to them. This story involved me, but my mother was the true target. Back when I was about 13 or so, my parents moved from Ohio to Kentucky. Apparently, they were born and raised there, but had moved to Ohio and were now moving back. I had only been there a few times when we went to visit family, so it was definitely going to be a new experience for me. I seemed to do all right, being an outgoing younger girl. I was quick to make friends. My parents met up with old friends and introduced me and their kids as well, so it worked out. I became pretty good friends with one of them and babysat a few as well. A little under a year into us moving back, our neighbors across from us moved out, and after seeing a couple going in and out and renovations being done, a new family moved in. Before my parents could go over and introduce themselves, though, someone was knocking on our door. I answered it to see an older guy, probably close to my parents' age. He looked very nice and super tall. I remember he leaned down and smiled at me and said, "You must be Carla's kid." I knew that was my mom's name, and I didn't get any weird vibes from him, so I confirmed and asked if he was looking for her, to which he nodded. So I shouted for my mom and invited him in. He walked in, but stayed right in the mudroom area. When my mom came into the room, she smiled and looked surprised. The guy smiled and greeted her, and she went up and hugged him. That's when she introduced him as Jim, and that she went to school with him, and they started talking for a bit. She explained she moved out of state, and that they had recently moved back here, and he looked surprised and teased her about why she would move back, and she mentioned being homesick and her father-in-law, my grandfather, not doing very well. He again seemed shocked about her response, and then she started calling for my dad. He came in and they shook hands, but I remembered at that point he looked worried about something. I remembered this because my dad was also a very big guy, and people often seemed scared of him, and I figured that's what it was. He built houses for a living, so he was always super tall and a heavier build. He typically had a long beard, but was bald, so he definitely could look intimidating, but he truly is a gentle giant. Like your stereotypical biker, but he also hated bikes. He's hilarious. Anyways, they didn't talk very long after that. He mentioned next time he'll come over to introduce his wife and left. Nothing too strange about that interaction. A few days later, I came home from a friend's house and saw my mom, Jim, and a lady that I would learn was his wife, was sitting in our living room talking. I was introduced to Tammy, his wife, but noticed she did not seem as nice as Jim. My mom asked how school was and how my friend was, And when I started talking about something I made or did in school, my mom congratulated me, and Jim became really excited about it. He said something like, "That's incredible. You're a really smart kid. You must be really proud of her." My parents told me when I did a great job, so I wasn't ignored or neglected, but the way he was so ecstatic about it made me pretty happy too. That's when he touched Tammy's stomach and said he hoped his kid was as smart as I am. Being a kid, I just made a comment that I would help with babysitting if they ever needed one. Jim was smiling and about to say something when Tammy made a comment about being a stay-at-home mom and it wouldn't be necessary. Her reactions just seemed really weird. Like it made me feel like I had said something wrong. Jim said something about it being their first kid, and my mom told me to go do my homework. From then on, I seemed to see a lot of Jim. When I was out riding my bike, I would see him and he'd wave me over and ask me about my day, ask me what kind of activities I was into, things like that. He'd then ask about my mom, what she was doing, what she was making for dinner, or even what she liked to do. I didn't think it was that weird at first, since they were friends and could answer the best I could. But then he would make comments about how pretty I was and how much I looked like her. She had dark hair and dark eyes, where my dad had orange, reddish hair, or beard at least. So I've always looked more like my mom. Again, I thought it seemed normal and would ask him if he wanted to talk to my mom or something, but then he would always ask if my dad was around. When I would tell him he was home, he would quickly make a comment about being busy or no thanks and go back to his home. Thinking back, he never seemed to want to be around when my dad was home as well. Slowly, it would get weirder though. I noticed he started changing his appearance. He would dress differently. He started gaining weight and growing a beard. Then, at one point, he even shaved his head. I remember at one point saying at dinner that Jim looked like Dad now, and while my dad laughed, my mom chuckled but looked a little uncomfortable about it. That's about when things really went downhill though. I came home from school one day, and he stopped me as I was getting the mail, and he asked me to help him with something in his home. I didn't think anything of it as he had given me things before and went in. When I did, he showed me pictures of a little girl and asked if I knew who that was. When I told him I didn't know, he said it was a picture of me. I was curious as to why he had a picture of me as a small child, but I had no reason to not believe him. The girl had dark hair, dark eyes, and reminded me of myself, and that's when he explained. He said my mom had given him the picture because of a secret she had kept, and that secret was that he was actually my dad. He said the reason they moved away was because the man that I called my father wanted to run away with my mom, being he was jealous of him. But she wanted him to at least have a picture of me. I didn't believe him at first. How could he be my father? Why would another man take me in as his own? Or at least not tell me the truth? Then I remembered what he looked like, having identical features of my mom, and it really messed me up. I told him I had to leave, and he told me to promise I wouldn't tell my fake dad so that we wouldn't get hurt. I promised, went home, and immediately told my mom. I did tell her when it was just her though, just in case there was any truth to it. To say she was livid would be an understatement. She assured me my dad was my real dad, and there was no way he could have been my father, considering they moved out of the state long before I was even thought of, which made sense to me. She then told me to try and avoid him as much as possible, and she made sure to meet me at the driveway for the bus to pick me up and drop me off so he wouldn't stop me either, worried if he may try to do something else. I agreed, and later that night, I heard my parents talking about it later that night because, of course, I was still a nosy kid that loved both of her parents and was worried if this would cause them to divorce. Don't worry, it didn't. My mom was furious about it, but my dad seemed a bit calmer, saying if he tried anything, he would be prepared. The first time I got off the bus, my mom was there waiting for me. We started walking back home when we saw Jim walking towards us, smiling. My mom told me not to say anything to him, and as he approached us, he tried asking my mom how she was when she cut him off. She said some pretty mean things to him, including being delusional and that he needed help and to avoid me at all costs if he wanted to see the birth of his own child. He honestly looked like he was about to cry behind his fake smile. And with that, he didn't say anything else and just turned around and went home. However, while we wouldn't see Jim again, we would see Tammy banging on our door, yelling expletives. I was in the dining room doing my homework at the table and remembered jumping because of the banging. My mom answered the door and she immediately started calling her names and threatening her. I went into the living room to see what was going on, and I remember her calling her a homewrecker specifically. She then tried to hit my mom with a golf club and got her in the leg, but my mom didn't want to really do anything because she was pregnant. She finally got the door closed and had me call the cops while she did so. Tammy managed to run back to her house, and the cops showed up at ours, and my mom explained what all happened, and that's about when my dad got home too. They both decided together not to press charges, my dad's choice more, not my mom's though, but was able to get a protective order so she wasn't allowed to come over here. My mom started picking me up from school though, to be safe, and every once in a while, we would see Jim sitting out front on his porch, but nothing more. After some time, we hardly saw any trace of them, like the cars were never in the driveway. We saw a few people come and go over there that were not Jim or Tammy, and then eventually started seeing less and less activity in that house. That's when my mom started letting me ride the bus again, and life really continued as normal, and I had even forgotten about it until recently. My parents are still together and love to tease each other, and after my mom got a discount on her Starbucks one day, my dad made the comment about her getting a crazy ex again. That's when they actually started talking to me about what happened. Apparently, Jim was an ex-boyfriend she had in high school, but he became really weird and clingy, so she broke it off with him, and he got even weirder. She completely forgot about it after graduating, getting married, and moving, so it never crossed her mind. When we moved back, she still wasn't worried about it since they were adults, and knowing he was married with a kid on the way. Apparently, that wasn't the case though, and not only did he continue to try and persuade my mother to leave my dad, but he tried convincing me I was his daughter. This all was found out by his wife, Tammy, who became enraged, and that's what caused her to be so off-putting around me and wanting to fight my mother, I guess. They then told me that she had moved out and he followed shortly after, based on information she got from other neighbors and friends. So, there's that. My mom had a weird ex-boyfriend that tried to convince me I was his kid, but that, and every other plan he had, failed. I hope he and Tammy are happy with their lives now, wherever they are. But also, I hope to never meet either one of them, ever, again. Hi, Patience. I'd love it if you could read this story, as you don't seem to get as many. Raven is a great narrator and all, but if you could read this story, I'd be more than fine with that. Thank you. This is my first time submitting my story due to just laziness and the slight feeling of anxiety I get every time I think about this experience. But I feel it would make a good story for the channel. This happened when I was 16. It was the summer between freshman and sophomore year, and I wanted some extra money for the school year, just in case me and my friends wanted to go out during lunch. It was my first job, and I got to work with my mother. She worked at the laundromat at a hotel, and they needed someone for the front desk during the day. She recommended me as I was bilingual, speaking both English and Spanish fluently, something they needed as some of the housekeepers there only spoke Spanish, and the manager only spoke English. I worked from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday for that entire summer. I managed what floors got assigned to the housekeepers and made sure all the guests that were supposed to leave that day left on time, or if they needed extra time, I'd accommodate that and communicate it with the housekeepers. I would also clean up the breakfast area once 10 a.m. came around and check people in once it was 3 p.m. One of the housekeepers came to me at around 11 a.m. telling me one of her rooms was still locked and no one was answering from inside. Expecting the guests to have left without informing me or them staying an extra night, I came up to the room with her to see what was up. I knocked on the door and made my presence clear. "Front desk," I said, expecting to hear a reply or shuffle on the other side of the door. I knocked again after a few seconds without hearing a reply. "Front desk." No reply. I used my master key to unlock the door. "Okay, I'm coming in," I said, making sure to let them know so they don't think someone was breaking in. The door opened an inch or two before stopping. The chained lock was still attached. The little chain you can use to make sure no one enters a room, even if they have the key. I closed the door back and told the housekeeper I'd wait an hour before trying again, since you can only have the little chain on if someone is inside the room. About an hour later, the housekeeper comes back and tells me she's done cleaning every room except that one. I grab my master key and head up to the room once again. I knock and announce myself again. "Front desk." No answer. I wait a couple seconds and knock again. "Front desk." This time, I hear a little shuffle on the other side of the door, like someone getting up from under the covers. I hear really quick footsteps getting closer and closer to the door, as if someone is angry and quickly walking to unlock the door. I backed up a couple steps, fully expecting an angry guest to burst through the door to yell at me. Just as it sounded like they were on the other side of the door, the footsteps stopped. I waited for what seemed like hours, but realistically, it was at most 20 seconds. I turned to look at the housekeeper and back at the door before knocking one last time. "Front desk, hello?" I stated before I unlocked the door with the master key card. "I'm coming in," I said as I opened the door, but this time, the door opened all the way. No chain lock. The room was dark and cold. The AC must have been blasting all day. The beds were made a mess, and towels were thrown everywhere, but no one was inside. What did I hear on the other side of this door? I clearly heard someone get up from under the covers and walk towards the door. I asked the housekeeper, and she said she heard it too. The room was empty. There was no way they could have left in the short span between hearing the footsteps and me unlocking the door. This room was on the 3rd floor of the building, and the windows were closed, not to mention the bug screen was still on. I would have heard them walk back or take off the chain lock or something, but the room was empty. The housekeeper refused to stay inside the room, so I assigned the room to a different housekeeper. To this day, I cannot explain what I heard. If it was just me, I could explain it as me being crazy. But I wasn't alone. The housekeeper heard it too, and it was clear where the noise was coming from. Directly across from the other side of the door. Anyways, thank you for reading my story if you choose to. So that, my friends, was another scary story collection. Again, a couple of those that it's just, I'm sorry, because that's one of those weird fears that I don't ever think about until being there with the public showers. Most experience I guess I've had with that would be the gyms, because I don't really go to swimming at beaches or anything, but I don't like those. And that's one of those reasons why, because anybody could do that. Would hope people wouldn't, but yeah, not my thing. And I'm just going to say that I'm glad that I've never known about one of the hotels I've stayed at being haunted or something, because I don't need that. I'm usually there to relax. Please don't bring that on me. I don't know. If you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a like below. And if you'd like to hear more content like this, consider subscribing. I say it at the beginning, but we'll say it at the end as well. If you do have a story that you'd like to submit, anything, glitch, creepy story, creepy person, creepy entity, glitch, I don't know. Anything you got like that, you can send it at mariesfield.com. And yeah, we can have a feature on the channel. So, lastly, don't forget to leave a comment on your thoughts or let me know. It's getting hotter, so do you have anything that you quite enjoy doing during the summer? Any specific plans for the summer? Let me know. And with that being said, friends, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and a fantastic night. And until next time, take care.